Good evening, everyone. This is Scott Anderson with Agri-Best Feeds, and we're really excited about our webinar here this evening, Real Ranchers with Real Results. Agri-Best Feeds is here to enhance ranchers' lives and doing that through uniquely better agricultural products and customer service. And this evening, we have a great pleasure of having three of our top dealers in the whole company. These three have done over 300 loads of SweetPro and 350 loads of Redmond. And so they really are well aware of the SweetPro products and Redmond products and how they work on their own operations and also for their neighbors. So before we get in and introduce those guys, I just want to do a quick overview of some of the things that we feel is important to ranchers, and we want to come alongside ranchers and help them. The first thing is animal health and performance. What's best for that animal? Maximizing genetic potential, improving health, reproduction, average daily gain, weaning weights, calving ease, all of that. And these guys are going to be talking about that tonight on how that happens. Secondly is true feed efficiency. Looking and seeing your standing grass or your forage or hay as the crop and the cow is the harvester, and how tuning that harvester up to get more value out of your forage actually ends up meeting that third goal of bottom line producer profits. How can we come along and help our ranchers make more money with their operations? This is a complete nutrition program that we have. If what we look at is taking your forage, adding SweetPro at about 1 pound per head per day, and then the natural Redmond trace mineral salt with 60 plus naturally occurring trace minerals. This gives you a complete balanced ration with your protein energy, the powerful digestive aid probiotin, the minerals, both trace minerals, chelated and crystalloid, and vitamins, as well as encouraging or helping your cattle and sheep, horses get 25% more digestible energy and protein and other nutrients from your forage. So that's kind of the background, and I'm really excited to turn this over to our three panelists here this evening. We'll start out with Troy Harrington. He's has been our top dealer, and he's from Hammond, Montana, which is southeast Montana. So Troy, I'll let you go ahead and kind of go through and talk about your personal background, kind of what interested you in Agri-Best Feeds and these product lines, and then what you've experienced on your own ranch. And then I know we have a special guest tonight from you with a customer right in your area. So go ahead, Troy.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Can you hear me for sure now before I get going too much?
You're looking
all
good.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. I think it sounds good. Yeah. So I ranch down in southeast Montana, like Scott said, dear. Got a cattle and sheep operation here. And yeah, I've been on the ranch all my life, I guess. So I guess it's been, in 2006, a friend introduced me to SweetPro, and I honestly hadn't heard about it too much there at all about it there. And so we kind of had a deal there. We traded some horse hay for some tubs, and that's kind of how I got started in it. So I used it a little bit there, and actually kind of liked it. The cows looked really, really good once I got going. So I used it again the next year, and what I really noticed the first time was the hay consumption had went down quite a bit. They got going on it, and they were starting to leave a little bit of hay from what I was feeding them, because I guess I was using a molasses-based product before, and it seemed like they were just eating a lot of hay. So that is one big thing that interested me in the product. But then the health issues kind of came along with that too. I was noticing that, especially in the well, the calf end was big too because the sickness was just kind of leaving. I didn't, you know, got to where I wasn't hardly treating any calves in the spring. There was, you know, very minimal there. But we shed lamb about, between my brother and I, we shed lamb about 1,300 ewes. And boy, the lambing made a big difference that first year. So lambs were healthier. I fed it all winter, all spring, and boy, it just seemed like the lambs were bigger, healthier. So that was kind of a big plus right there. Kind of opened my eyes a little bit on the product. Scott asked me about being a dealer, I believe, in '08, and I guess at that time, I think I turned him down the first year there because we had some, I guess we had some medical stuff going on with one of our daughters, and so. But the next year, you kind of ask about it again, and it's like, yeah, this is something I think I want to sell because I believed in it, and I could see for 2 years the differences that it really made. So that's kind of why and how I got into it there, I guess. But yeah, boy, the calf weights went up considerably every year. You know, they were just higher than they had been, and so. Yeah, that's kind of the experiences I've had with it. And, you know, a good product sells itself because I'm definitely not the greatest salesman, but if you got a real good product and you care about the people you sell to, and I think that makes a big difference. And people use it for themselves and they can see what it does for them. They're going to come back because any business like this is all about repeat customers. So. And I've had a customer that's been around with me, I think, pretty much from the get-go. And I'll have to make one little comment. He probably doesn't remember it, but he might. But he said, he told me one time, he said, if you'll have product where I can come and get it, you know, and I don't have to wait for it. If I've got it there, he says, I'll buy this feed from you. So that kind of set the tone for my dealership there. I said, you know what, if I'm gonna do this, he's right. I've got to have whatever the people need, I got to have here. So I started working on my inventory, and took a couple years to kind of build it up to where you can kind of get going. But I always appreciated that advice he gave me. So, and he's on here tonight just to maybe say a word or two about what he's seen and why he started the program. So I guess I'll maybe turn it over to Lester. And he's a neighbor just down the road from me, about 10 miles, Lester Philippi. So I guess I'll turn it over to you, Lester, for a few words.
Okay, Troy. This isn't going to be near as wordy as you were, but I do remember telling you that about needing to have the product on hand. And I'm going to kind of jump ahead here a little bit. We've fed it for several years, and Troy had it on hand to where I would just go to his place and get a ton or two at a time and then bring it home and put it out. And I appreciate that. Now things have changed to where I just get a load in and unload it at our place and have it on hand. But I've made a lot of trips to Troy's and started his skid steer and loaded feed when he wasn't even home, and we had a good deal going that way. I'll back up a little bit. We're a commercial cow-calf operation, and then we also raise registered and commercial sheep. And at the time that Troy started in the business, my wife and I were on the ranch by ourselves, and at that time, as far as the cattle goes, we were feeding cake, and we had an overhead cake bin, and we had a trailer that we pulled behind pickup that we scattered cake with. So theoretically, it wasn't a lot of work, but it was another trip every day. And we were stretched thin enough that we did not need to have to be making another trip. So the labor part of it was one thing that interested me. And then Troy talked about the livestock utilizing their hay or their forage better, eating these tubs. And we buy hay a lot of years. I always say that we have more livestock than we have hay fields. So I'm pretty stingy with our hay. And they have to clean it up. I don't let my cows or sheep lay on hay. They don't get to bed on it. Anyway, the fact that we could get better use out of our hay, and then the fact that there wasn't as much labor involved is what interested me in it to start with. And with these tubs, you can, when you have them out, every animal gets a chance to come by and get their supplement. If you're feeding cake, anybody that's strung out cake to a bunch of cows knows that there's a bunch of them that's going to get their share and half of another cow's share. And there's always some that are timid and they get squeezed out, or the older ones that you probably should have sold that year but kept another year, why they don't do as good. With the tubs, they're out there and everybody gets a chance at it. And that to me is a biggie. I got to stop and think for a minute here. When we was feeding cake, if it was muddy, you either didn't feed it or you just dumped it in the mud. And there again, you had some waste. And same way, right now we're dry. We're real dry. We've been dry all summer. And if we was feeding cake right now, we would be feeding it in the dust. So the tubs just make sense all the way around that way to me. And I did make a few notes, so I got to look here for a minute. But we get some of our tubs, the reduced copper ones. And the pasture that we have our replacement heifer calves in, or coming yearling heifers, we also run our commercial sheep in there. And we put out the reduced copper tubs. So far, we have not had any problems that way. The sheep eat on them some, the calves learn to eat them, and we also grain the sheep. We corn them, just we do yet. Another advantage on these tubs is, like I told you, we quite often buy hay. We buy some of our hay most years, not all of it by any means, but some of it. If you get along in March or April and run out of hay, you're going to pay pretty dearly for it, if you can even find any hay. And the SweetPro tubs are available. I can make a phone call and get some. So the fact that it is available and therefore stretches our hay some is a biggie to me. I don't have figures for you on weaning weights and such, but just an example, we feed the tubs to our cows in the wintertime. We feed the 20% tubs. And then we feed it during calving. And after they go out on pasture, we don't. But this year, we preg-tested. This year, we had an extremely dry year and a lot of grasshoppers, so everything was stressed. But after our cows having been on SweetPro last winter and all the way through calving, we preg tested this fall. We tested 400 head of cows that was exposed. That included our coming 2-year-old heifers and so on. And we had 14 dries. So that was a biggie to me. It was. I guess I'm kind of run down. If anybody's got any questions, I'll see if I can answer them. Otherwise, I'll kick it back to whoever's running the show here.
All right, Lester, thanks a lot. And if you got questions, you can start typing them in so you can remember them. We'll go ahead and go through each of these guys and then have our questions here towards the end. So next, we're going to go over down to Nebraska and Brett Phipps. So Brett, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of run through your story.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I was born and raised on the ranch here in the Sandhills of Nebraska, and we were homeschooled, so I spent quite a bit of time on the ranch. At that time, we ran about 2,500 head of yearling stockers and about 50, 75 head of horses. We didn't have any cow calves at that time, so I didn't have a whole lot of experience with that through my growing up years. I went to Torrington, Wyoming on a rodeo scholarship and got an ag business degree and was trying to rodeo as long as I could. So I took as many ag classes and some finance and nutrition as I possibly could. And I got done with that and I needed to do an internship. And through some mutual acquaintances, they put me in touch with Irv Heidel there, the founder of Agri-Best. And long story short, I got, kind of hired on there or accepted as the intern and did some work for Agri-Best, doing some field work and some put work, some grass analysis that never seemed to end. And did some help with a couple expos and a couple feed suppers and so forth like that. And when I got done, they kind of said, well, we kind of need some help continuing on. So I just kind of helped and, we stayed in contact and stayed in touch. Like that. And during this period, we'd obviously started using it ourselves. Now, we don't ever jump into anything head first. And so the first year that we tried it, I believe was in 2008. I tried it on 100 head, and our gain through the summer months on the Fibermate 16 was 3.02 pounds a day. Well, that's, half a pound better than anything that we ever got before. So that kind of got our attention. So the next year we put about 500 head on it and we got 2.98 pounds of gain. So we were pretty much benchmarked at that 3 pounds of gain a day. And we got real impressed with the fact that we didn't have to go around and chase everything with the vaccine gun all the time because of the foot rot or pink eye or whatnot like that. And so probably 2010 through 2012, we pretty much switched everything entirely over to the Redmond salt and the SweetPro. We still feed some bulk commodities in the wintertime when things get tough, some cake and so forth, but we don't do any of that during any time you can find a blade of green grass. We don't do any of that. So it's either the tubs or the Redmond from then on. We cut our sickness and death loss by about 80% that first year. And then it's just always continued. And since then, we've kind of been revolutionizing how we do things. We've been rotating our pastures a little different and so forth, because we found out that, hey, there is a better way there. You can, raise what the industry average is and do a little bit better than other guys and so forth like that are running the same type of ground and same stalkers. One of the big things we fought was the coccidiosis. We had that really bad for years. I used to saddle 3 or 4 horses and ride about 5 miles to our east meadow, and we just spend the day down there roping and doctoring every day during March and April. That was just kind of That was the thing. That's what we did. And the first year, or the second year there, we realized that we didn't have really any problems on that particular herd that we'd use the SweetPro on. And that's one of the things that, kind of convinced us to use it the next year. And with that being on everything, then we eliminated it. I think the last case that we had of coccidiosis was in 2012. We still run quite a few cattle. We do have 400 head of mama cows now. And I don't really worry about them with that problem as much as the stockers and the yearlings, but I don't even know if we have the stuff to treat it with anymore. The SweetPro eliminated that. Then, here in later years, we've started building up our cow herd a little higher and higher, and started using the SweetPro, obviously, and the Redmond on them. We've never had to clean or had a cow that didn't clean. And I've got a lot of Redmond customers. I probably deal, probably 4-to-1 in Redmond trucks versus SweetPro trucks. And I don't think that I've ever heard of one of my customers ever having a cow that didn't clean. And we attribute that to the Redmond. Something else on my customers, we got a lot of grass here in the Sandhills most of the time. We got the irrigated or sub-irrigated naturally wet meadows. But a lot of times our grass isn't that good. So it seems like there's a mineral salesman every, 20 miles. And there's a lot of mineral that flows into the Sandhills. And Redmond boasts that they can, on national average, cut your mineral consumption by 50%. And we've seen that around here, 50 to 80%, honestly. I mean, that's the number one attribute that my guys love, is they're not having to pay, for 2 truckloads of $1,000 a ton mineral in per year. Now they're only getting the 1 truckload in, and they attribute that to the Redmond. And then the health benefits, that's just the gravy. But they're already making money on the other part. So anyway, that's the big thing. Like I said, I'm mostly the Redmond versus the SweetPro. Around here, it's a lot of range and cake. There's a lot of Nebraska's kind of the land of dry distiller grains, and so there's a lot of cake that comes into this country. I don't hardly know of a ranch that does not have an overhead bin and a cake and pickup, and so the tubs can sometimes be a little bit of a tougher sale once people try them. They like them and so forth like that. But right off the get-go, it's just kind of tough to change off the industry average. And then backing up a little bit to what Lester and those guys said, the hay savings, I've seen that firsthand on our place. Depends on the growth and variation of cattle and the weather and so forth. I've seen 10 to 20, 25% easy. We don't have any bunks on the place. Everything's out on range. So it's tough for me to really tell you, oh yeah, we cut back by 32 pounds a day on, X amount of cattle and so forth. But if a herd of cattle normally is consuming 3 bales, and then you put them on the SweetPro, and 2 weeks later or 10 days later, you can't hardly get them to clean up 2 bales. That's obviously a feed savings. We don't baby anything. They don't get to lay on anything. They got to clean it up, kind of like what Lester said there. 2012 with the drought, that was a big year for me for sales, and for gaining customers and customers to kind of see what this product can do. Everybody's wanting to save forage that year with the drought and everything. And I've had a lot of guys thank me for, getting them some SweetPro and extending their pastures. We'd already had everything on the SweetPro and continued to feed it through 2012. And we came out pretty good on that. We actually took in some neighbors' cows that winter because we had forage left over, and forage being left over was something you just didn't hear of that year. So anyway, that's kind of a rundown of the questions there and some customer results in my area. So I'll turn it back to you, Scott.
All right, thanks, Brett, and continue asking the questions, putting questions in the comments there. We'll get to those here in just a minute. We'll move over to Wyoming now, and Gwen Shepperson. Gwen, can you go ahead and kind of visit a little bit on some of your experience you've had?
Hi, well, we are in central Wyoming. We actually started using SweetPro back in 2007 on our previous ranch. We were a very large partnership, family partnership. We ran about 3,000 head of mama cows on about 250,000 acres total. The place that my husband Reno and I ran was basically the seed stock operation for the whole partnership, meaning we had a mature cow herd, but we also weaned all the calves from all the partnership, raised them for till yearlings and as replacements, bred them, calved them as 2-year-olds. Nothing left our place until they were a 3-year-old that had been, or 2 coming 3-year-old, preg tested, and then they could go to the other ranches. So we kind of had all classes of the cattle. We mostly ran on forage, didn't feed a lot of hay, and we had fed pretty much every molasses tub you could imagine out there. We had fed cake, and we just felt like there was a better answer out there. You know, we would doctor calves for scours in the spring. We would doctor calves that were getting sick on the mountain in the summer when the evenings got a little chillier but the days were still warm. We felt like we had a little brisket BRD going on up there, foot rot in bulls. Just we were looking for something better that we felt like was an answer. I mean, the molasses tubs really didn't impress us as far as performance or any health advantages, so we were looking for a better answer. And SweetPro, we decided to give a try. 2007, we actually also calved 450 heifers in 45 days. So that was a really good test for the tubs. But we noticed right away the lack of scours. That was probably the first thing. So we started feeding them in the spring. And we noticed if we were space feeding and our cattle ran out, it would take you about a week, and then you'd start seeing scours again, and you'd put SweetPro out and away it would go. And so that was probably the first thing. We also had heifers in the corral, and we noticed right away the amount of hay that we had to feed in the corral to those 450 heifers dropped. I think we were feeding 4 1,700-pound bales, and we went to about 2.5 by the end of that calving season. We had always been pretty vigilant with our repro, buying good bulls, making sure we move cattle around, watching calves for, average daily gain and things like that. But we noticed that because we could tighten up that breeding schedule, because our cows were more dialed in nutritionally, we had a more even set of calves. We really, really liked what it did for us in the generations, down the line, because once we had the replacement heifers, then we could see how they bred up. I don't think ever have had an under 95% breed back, even on our heifers in a 45-day period. Being able to tighten that up, especially with your heifers and then your cows, and then have that go on for years and years and years, it's almost something you don't think about anymore, which is pretty nice to have. We had enough success that all our neighboring ranchers started asking us, hey, what are you guys feeding? It's making a big difference. So we had a lot of neighboring ranchers try SweetPro too, and they had really good luck with it too. The hardest thing was to convince them that it really does work this well. It really does make a difference. But, I don't think we would ever go back to not feeding it, because the things that you don't have to think about, scours and your breed back rate and your calves when you wean them. We have since sold that ranch, and now we're here in Shoshoni, and we have a feedlot, and we're weaning calves for other people. And these are calves that have never been on SweetPro. And this year especially was a really good test for that because of the drought, and drought was bad. It was dry. The water was not great. And, you know, we've had calves come in that have never seen SweetPro, and in 3 days, they're quiet. They're eating exactly how much they should be. We still haven't had to doctor anybody. And, you know, we weaned our own calves in August. So it was hot and dry and dusty and pretty miserable. If you were going to be a sick calf, you definitely would have gotten sick. And we've had to pull porcupine quills, but that's about it. But it really made our herd dialed in, no matter what we expected of them, even if it was drought, even if it was hot, even if they were up in the altitude in the mountains for the summer. And we actually found that when we went to a year-round program, it even more so showed us how you can really dial in a herd with nutrition. And most people that try it and feed it year-round find the same thing. It's hard to convince people that a year-round program works out as well as it does, and it will pay for itself, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, we really have kind of tested everything, you know, as far as average daily gain, health, feed efficiency, repro, calving. I mean, I can't remember the last time we had a cow that didn't clean. And we actually bought sale barn cattle and kind of turned them around. They were, they had a 6-month calving cycle when we bought them, and we tightened that up in 45 days and remained over 95% in 1 year. So we like it for sure.
So Gwen, can you were mentioning the feedlot and you're receiving and using, can you talk a little bit, because I think you used the cattle candy with stress a little bit on the value of the extract there and your approach with that?
We have used the cattle candy with the garlic and stress blend for going on 2 years now. We fed it to our own calves last year. We weaned in the middle of August. Last year we weaned in the beginning of August. This year we fed it to my daughter's show cattle as well, just because they tend to, they tend to be a little more stressed when we wean them. And then we used it on some 200 heifer calves, which you guys might have seen on the social media pages. I've been trying to keep everybody updated, but yeah, they were in a drought out pasture. The hoppers got it. The water they were drinking was pretty much black mud. They weren't able to precondition them before they were weaned. So these calves had every excuse to come in and just not do well. And I don't know if they were just so happy to see feed and water, cold water, but you know, they had never seen SweetPro before. They had not been on any sort of lick tubs since they were baby calves in the spring. And within 3 days, they were eating the targeted amount we wanted them to eat. We had them in the corral for the first month, and then they're out on hay aftermath now. And the only thing we pulled a heifer that had a down ear, because we had solid 60-mile-an-hour winds for like 4 days, and I gave her a shot of penicillin, and that was the end of that. But we have not doctored a single one out of either one of those herds. And I really think that, you know, the garlic, keeping the flies, and we have noticed even a difference in the winter with the lice, and then the stress blend helping keeping them eating and drinking, and just keeping those guts in that rumen super happy and super productive has definitely made a big difference.
Excellent. Well, Gwen, one of the things, just a hats off to her. She is the one that does all of our Facebook social media stuff. And so if you're on our website, you can see our Facebook right there. If you go to Facebook, and I suppose it's look for Agri-Best Feeds, you'll find it. But she does a tremendous job with keeping up on that. But one of the things in this setting, I wanted you to visit a little bit about kind of a real ranch test that we didn't even know about that was coming. So if you go onto our website, this is agribestfeeds.com, click on the cattle tab. It'll take you to the cattle page. And over on the right side, here's some real ranch results and ranch comparisons, Shepperson's 2016. So I'll open that up, and Gwen, if you can kind of talk through this, and this may bring some questions as well, and then we'll get into some Q&A.
So we ended up splitting our partnership, and when we split the partnership, we basically split our ranch. Everything else was leased property. So our ranch was the only thing that we owned. So we basically split that acreage right down the middle, and we split the cow herd right down the middle. So for an entire year, we had basically identical genetics and identical rangeland. And our old partners decided they were not going to continue to feed SweetPro. And so in 1 year with us continuing a year-round program, and they just fed salt, white salt, and range grass. And we just had range grass too. We actually weren't feeding hay. We basically did this as a math problem for our kids, but it ended up being a really kind of amazing comparison. We had a 95 point something breed back rate at the end of that year, and their breed back rate in 1 year dropped to 82%. It has continued to drop, but in 1 year, that was a pretty significant, and this was a pretty good grass year too, by the way. Our average calf wean weight was 593 pounds, and the other herd dropped to 471 pounds. So that was a 13% more pregnancy rate, which is 58.5 more bred cows per 450, which was over almost $47,000 in difference of cost to sell an open cow and replace it with a bred cow at that time. 58.5% or more bred cows, we figured would average 50 more calves to ship from the next year's cash crop, which at 700 a head was $35,000 more dollars in revenue, and 122 additional wean calf weight from our 593 versus 401 pound calves at $1.30. This is when prices were a little better, but was an extra $158.60 per calf, which was an additional $63,400 per 400 calves sold. So that basically paid for the entire year's worth of SweetPro fed to the cattle and then some, just in what the difference was in 1 year feeding it versus not feeding it. So it was a really telling comparison for sure.
Excellent. So let's see if I can get back to the right spot here. Oh, wrong one. Sorry about that. There we go. So excellent, guys. So so great stuff tonight. These guys, like I say, they have moved a lot of SweetPro and Redmond, and they've done a fantastic job for us. They're great people. All of them have been with us over 12 years. So we've got a lot of longevity with them there. And so what I want to do is just open it up for some questions here this evening. If you click on the little question deal, you can ask your question, or if you raise your hand, I can call on you and we can do the just open your mic there. But to start with, I'm going to Mason Eberts, I believe he's over from North Dakota, had a question for Lester, asking why don't you use the SweetPro in the summer? So Lester, are you able to kind of visit through some of your thought processes on that?
I think I'm unmuted, and this, I guess we had it out during the summer for a while, and my luck with it was that they weren't eating it during the summer on our operation, our grass, and so on. So we didn't leave it out during the summer. Now in the fall, this year we weaned calves and sold them way earlier than usual. Usually in the fall, when the grass dries up and when the weather's cooling off, we will put it out and the cows will hit it then. And then the calves get started on it right alongside of the cows. So me saying we didn't have it out in the summer wasn't 100% true. But as far as just the part of the summer when our grass is green and they've got a lot to eat, they weren't eating a lot on the tub. So we did not continue to have it out during those times. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier, we do have Redmond salt out year round, and we don't feed blocks. We feed loose salt. So figure that if something needs it, I want them to be able to take in the amount they need. So we do feed the Redmond salt. I feed it in the winter time too when they're on the tubs, while we still have loose Redmond salt available to them.
Excellent.
I don't know if that answered your question on the summertime deal, but that was our reasoning.
Excellent. Perfect. We'll jump down to the next question here. Jason McDonald, Northwestern Montana. We have selenium deficiency in our area. We have a mineral that has been designated for the area that has extra selenium to make up for this deficiency. With SweetPro tubs, the mineral consumption will go down. How should we assume that the cattle are getting the appropriate amount of selenium? So is there someone who wants to kind of take a shot at that one?
I could jump in here, even though I'm not from Montana. I run into that a lot around here, not with selenium, but deficiencies in other areas, and guys will have a custom mineral and so forth like that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. A lot of what we seem to work, or what we think works best, is to put out some Redmond salt. A lot of times when you first put it out, they might underconsume or overconsume. If you put out a couple bags and you're right on the money, then you can go ahead and go to step 2. If not, wait until you get to that 2 to 3 ounces probably in your neck of the woods consumption. You can pull your mineral away, start feeding the SweetPro tubs, and then use the Redmond with the selenium 30 or the Redmond with the selenium 90 to supplement on the side your selenium. So make it a couple stage process to work your way into there, so you're not just all of a sudden dropping one mineral and completely switching to another, especially where you're deficient in one thing. To back up though, we kind of need to know how many parts per million selenium are you requiring, and if you're requiring 200 parts per million and it's a 4-ounce mineral, then we might disregard what I just said. But otherwise, that's kind of what we do around here anyway, and it seems to work real well, is that gradual transition by using the Redmond for that, and then the SweetPro has the guaranteed vitamin mineral pack already in it.
All right, excellent. Let's see. So Gerald, I'm not sure where Gerald's from here. What is consumption per head per day on SweetPro tubs, and how's consumption controlled? So some feedback from our panelists on that.
I can We usually try to a pound or to a pound and a quarter for cows, and calves we find about 3/4 of a pound is where they're doing the best at. And heifers, replacement heifers, once you get them breeding, we want them at about 0.8 to even 1 pound if it's really drouthy. And we like to use the space feeding method. And there's a post, I think it was this week or last week, about space feeding. But you put certain amount out, you put enough out for your herd for a certain amount. We usually do recommend enough for a week, see how they're eating it. If they run out, you don't put more, you know, they've eaten enough for that amount of time per head, and we don't put any more out. They don't need to be standing on it all the time, because once you get the room in, and you do have to adjust when you first do feed it, that they do have to catch up and acclimate to what they're eating. So, and that depends greatly on the herd and the forage, but it can be anywhere from a week to 6 weeks. But when you finally can see that they're on target and eating that amount, you just don't put more out until the allotted time. And that's because you can keep the rumen happy and processing things the way that SweetPro does without having to have it in front of them all the time. We recommend that you don't go more than 5 days without it out. And we always like to have salt and of course fresh water too.
Excellent. Hopefully that answers your question. Jason, just to follow up on yours, McDonald, who do you send the data to? Probably on that, if you want to just go to agribestfeeds.com and do a contact us, or we'll probably connect up with one of our nutritionists to help you navigate kind of special things in different areas. So other questions anyone has, you can raise your hand and you can ask your question. It's great to have these panelists around. Got another about 10 minutes, so anybody else has any questions, you can either type it in or raise your hand. Troy, while we still got you, I know you got to run here and maybe you got to run real quick, but can you just, you were talking about your daughter and the health situations. Can you just mention a little bit on that, on what you had noticed on the Redmond, which real salt side of things with her health?
There, finally let me unmute. So yeah, I should have probably mentioned that earlier, but so in 2008, one of my daughters, I've got 4 daughters, and one of them needed a kidney transplant in 2008. So she had a lot of issues with, well, of course she had to do labs all the time. So we knew about all the deficiencies she had and whatnot. One of them was too much sodium. Well, that was about the time we started on the Redmond. It was actually a year or 2 after the transplant, but her sodium levels were always an issue. And we started using the Redmond, the real salt, and we went out to Rochester and Minnesota. There was where we did all this doctoring and stuff. So when we got going on it, about 6 months, we were out for a checkup and her sodium was way down. I mean, it was, so I'll just give you the levels, like 200 is borderline, I think, and above 200 is too high. Well, it had been running 220, 240. And so that particular time, after we'd been using the real salt for, like I said, 6 months, it dropped to 180. And so one of the main nurses out there said, well, is this right? So we may need to check this again. And they did, and it was the same. So they're saying, well, that seems kind of odd. Is there anything different? You must have really cut out. And I was sitting there and it's like, well, I don't know what we did. Well, thank goodness my wife was sitting right there, and she goes, well, we're using Redmond, and that's supposed to reduce, blood pressure, sodium, all this stuff. And so that was a huge thing. And to this day, her sodium is doing well, and she's using it all the time. She carries it with her, these little tiny packets, so she doesn't even, we all don't eat white salt anymore. We can't really stand it. So that was a big deal for what I saw in that part of it. It was real life and right in front of us, and it's like, wow, that made a big difference. So yeah, even
kind of fun to see that in on the human side, and the value that, of course, we can see then with the livestock and things. I got about 5 more minutes here, guys, so we can kind of answer any more questions if anybody has any. I don't want to hold everybody back here, or if you have any other questions for our panelists while we have them on here. Just raise your hand or type the question in. I guess I don't see anything. Anything else our panelists want to say or close here?
Well, Scott, I do got to run, but I just want to appreciate you guys a bunch. And something I hasn't mentioned, and I'd probably mentioned it before, it's been pretty amazing working with a group of guys at Agri-Best Feeds. Couldn't ask for any better people, and just it's just a good. Not only is it a good product, but the people that we get to work with, you guys, and you're all great up there. You guys got each got your own area, and you're very good at it, and we appreciate you a bunch. So thanks. I would like to thank Lester too for getting on here tonight. Sure appreciate him and giving a few words there. So anyway, I think I need to run. I got another thing going on. So
engagement. There you go. He's at a big concert.
Yeah.
So rock on, or country out, or whatever you do there, Troy. Yeah. So have a good time.
We'll see. Yeah. Going for some friends. So
there you
otherwise
go.
we probably wouldn't have been there, but yeah, it'll be fun, I hope.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks
everybody.
a lot, Troy. We'll see you. Anything else in closing here? Any of the other panelists?
Yeah, Scott, this is Brett. Say, just something for, everybody to think about. We're all producers here. The SweetPro and the Redmond is the most efficient feed I've ever seen. I mean, there's other stuff that might give you more weight gain or something like a bulk commodity and so forth, but pounds per dollar and health and just your overall, the SweetPro and the Redmond, it's the most efficient thing you can get. So don't be scared to try it. Here in Nebraska, our taxes skyrocketed the last several years, and guys had to get super efficient, super fast. So, whether you're looking at hard times now, it's probably coming down the road. I would try to at least try it. At least, you can either check it off the list or know that, hey, this might be the way to go to save us money and get built up, going down the road here to be a little more efficient and, trying to harvest those more pounds per acre and run more cattle per acre and so forth like that by still reducing your costs. So don't be scared to try it, because, everybody's going to have to get super efficient at some point in their life. Might as well start dabbling in it now.
Excellent. Thanks, Brett. Thanks for being on tonight.
This Lester, can I say something?
You bet.
I just wanted to say that this operation will continue to feed Redmond salt and the SweetPro tubs. And I also wanted to make one other little comment on the products you were showing there. That was sure good looking Arrow Quip squeeze chute.
There you go. If you got any use for a good squeeze chute or cattle handling equipment, we can handle you out there too. That was a little subliminal advertising there, maybe, or maybe not too subliminal with the big chute. But thanks, Lester.
All of our stuff loaded out this fall went up an Arrow Quip loading chute.
That worked out pretty good for you?
It's good.
Excellent.
Yeah, it did. It does. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Thanks, Lester. All right. Anything else, Gwen?
Oh, one thing I we kind of never touched on, but the other thing that I think makes SweetPro really a better advantage over some of the other tubs that we fed in the past is the probiotin digestive aid. And I can make a post about that tomorrow, but it is such a broader spectrum digestive aid than most tubs out there. And like Brett was saying, it will make your herd more efficient in every way. And I think that's important. I mean, hay is not cheap. The cattle market's not great. And we are trying to do everything as efficiently as possible, but not sacrifice anything to do that. And so I think I'll make, like I said, I'll make a post about it tomorrow, but take a look at the probiotin digestive aid too, because that really does make a difference in making your cattle or your sheep or your horses or whatever the most efficient production machine that they can be in every sense of the word.
Excellent. Well, thanks. And that's a good segue into making sure you check out the Facebook page. See it tomorrow. Gwen will have something out there on probiotin. Feel free to connect up with us through our website or call us directly. You see, got a couple of our guys here, Dwayne Hould from up in Montana, and Vince Guthrie is our sales regional sales manager in Nebraska that's on here, and Todd Daniels in Wyoming. So we can help you hopefully maximize herd health and performance, forage utilization, and bottom line your profitability and enhance your lives is what we're all about. So thanks everybody for being on tonight. Keep watching the Facebook, and we'll have more of these in the future. Have a good night.